Hello. Okay, so as a expectation for completing my sprint reflection form today uh, in our SDC Capstone project, or our System Design Capstone, I am going to be going over some of my areas of technical growth on video and kind of just reading those aloud and practicing my communication. Um, and yeah, and we'll see what I get out of this. So, were there any significant roadblocks I faced during the sprint? And please elaborate. So, finding thorough, up to date information about setting up CouchDB and Docker. Docker is not a technology that I got to in the front end capstone project. So it's a wholly new technology. Same with CouchDB, which is a NoSQL database, and it's CouchDB is pretty significantly less popular than Mongo or like SQL databases like MySQL. So the documentation on it is there, but it is not extensive. So that was a little bit of a challenge, and continues to be a challenge. Something I'll continue to work through. So learning multiple new technologies while also using database technologies or interacting with databases, which is something we have done. We've done a fair amount of, but we haven't done it in a few weeks, and we've only done it for a couple weeks before that. So, you know, not something that I have as muscle memory yet. What technical decision points did you face this sprint? Forks in the road. What options did you have, and why did you choose the ones you did? Please elaborate. So I kind of highlighted three different big decision points when I was assessing which database to use, and a couple other big decision points there too. So first was SQL versus NoSQL. I'm focusing on a products component, which does have several different data needs. Two of my main data needs will include nested objects and nested arrays. The size of these objects and arrays completely depends on the product, and as far as I'm aware, the size of these has no limit. It's not specified in the document or in the documentation. So, predicting what the data should look like would be rather difficult to do, and that makes setting up a SQL database pretty difficult. So, what I decided to do was go the NoSQL route for those reasons. Next, I had to select a NoSQL database. Mongo was an obvious option, and I do really like Mongo. I think it has a lot of good features and a lot of support. That said, being a new software engineer, I really want to get some experience with other products, even if they're slightly inferior or just don't meet the needs that Mongo might need, because it's going to give me some relative sort of comparison. Right now, my only NoSQL database is Mongo. So to read about it's fast or it's slow, that's all relative to my experience. It's hard to really have a point of comparison. So that's one driving factor why I chose something different. I ended up going with CouchDB. And then CouchDB also, when I was looking into it, it has a couple features that Mongo didn't. Some mapping and reducing functionality. It accepts all forms of JSON, which I thought was pretty cool. And it's open source. I really like that it's open source. Another option, similar to CouchDB, that seems like it might have better functionality is Couchbase. But Couchbase is not open source, and I think there actually might be an associated fee or that has some like sticking points with price. So that was an obstacle there. So I ended up going with CouchDB. One thing I want to say about that decision is I fully reserve the right to go back on that decision and make changes if I find out CouchDB is not what I am looking for, or it can't do what I expect it to do. And I'm ready to make that decision should I need to. Lastly, clustering versus no clustering. This is something that is kind of beyond the scope of where I'm at in database setup and system design. However, it is something that's been talked about, I think, theoretically, it sounds useful. It does seem like it would be a way to increase performance, although it's a little bit beyond where I'm at right now. Kind of the guides that I was watching to set up the database offered a really simple way to create clustered databases. So I decided to just go ahead and set it up in that format. It really would have taken me the same amount of time to do that or to not do that. So that is what I did. I may, if I start to experience complications with the initial setup, I would say it's not worth having a clustered database at this point, and I might go back and make some changes on that. And then lastly, covering a challenge, an action, and a result that I kind of experienced during the last day and a half. So the challenge that I noticed was setting up CouchDB through Docker on my computer is a very foreign process to me, none of which is intuitive without reading documentation or referring to lecture notes. So the action I took was I spent some significant time investigating, reading through the CouchDB docs. CouchDB had a section on installing through Docker. I found a great Medium article that walked you through the whole process of setting up CouchDB through Docker. However, it was a slightly older version. That is a little unfortunate. However, the functionality sounds like it's basically the same. And I followed a few different resources, and now presumably, as far as I can tell, given the testing curl commands that I've sent into my command line, I do have a functioning cluster network of CouchDB databases running through Docker on my computer. So it's a mouthful to say. Pretty proud to be at this point. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Thank you for listening.